Let's discuss this further with Mehmet Çelik. He is an editorial coordinator at the daily Sabah. Very good to have you on the program, sir. How successful would you say that this meeting was between Erdoğan and Trump?
Well, I think that success was visible at several levels. First of all, very symbolically, when we look at how Trump received Mr. Erdoğan and how, it was so positive even in the pre-meeting press conference, that was, I think, a very good reflection of the positive welcome of Mr. Erdoğan at White House. But secondly, and most importantly, I think this meeting had a very a specific agenda and very specific topics to be talked about, to iron out some of the differences or overcome some of the obstacles in strengthening the bilateral ties. And this was definitely not a courtesy visit. So it had a very targeted aim when it comes to F-16s, F-35s, the bilateral trade, as well as some of the very important regional matters like Ukraine, Syria, and the catastrophe in Palestine, in Gaza. So when it comes to whether this meeting pinpointedly targeted these issues, I think was very successful. The outcome and the details about the results, of course, to be seen in the coming days. But I think the tone of the atmosphere and the tone of the meeting was a good reflection that this was a very successful meeting. Even in the statements that were shared with the media afterwards by both Turkey and the United States, I think it will translate into some tangible results, especially on the defense industry related matters, but more regionally, and I think more significantly also in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And hopefully, I think the Turkey's mobilization of the international community, international public opinion, and also, the fact that a big focus of the UNGA was allocated to Gaza, and that was a momentum there. Hopefully that will translate into some sort of maybe a ceasefire or some new developments, positive developments on the Gaza issue as well.
So let's talk some more about these international issues. Ukraine, for example, you mentioned that. There have already been negotiations between Russia and Ukraine right here in Istanbul. Do you think there's the possibility now of a meeting between the four presidents from Russia and Ukraine together with the US and Turkey here?
That's a very good question, and it's very hard to answer. Previously, two or three times they met in Istanbul, and very earlier time they had met in Antalya. But when it comes to bringing Mr. Putin to Turkey to meet Zelensky, I think that's where the difficulty is, because for Vladimir Putin, Mr. Zelensky is not a legitimate leader, and if the United States is able to put pressure on both sides or influence on both sides, of course, Turkey is a very neutral place for that meeting, and Turkey has voiced that willingness to host a meeting, to at least establish some sort of dialogue platform, leader-to-leader dialogue, and that ultimately could be serving for the interest of a peace in the long term. But the difficulty is not whether, Mr. Zelensky has already voiced his willingness to come to Turkey. He has already come to Turkey waiting for Vladimir Putin, but whether that will actually materialize, it is not as easy as holding some diplomatic meetings as Turkey hosted them previously by delegations from both sides. But of course, when Donald Trump is pushing for something, it's sometimes he makes it happen, and hopefully, if that leader-to-leader meeting takes place, I think it will be a good positive step towards a permanent peace or a ceasefire, at least in the Ukraine conflict.
Yeah. And Gaza was, of course, also top of the agenda, both during that meeting at the White House and also at the UN. Erdoğan, he's been extremely critical of Netanyahu, but if you look at Trump, he's probably Netanyahu's main backer. How close are the US and Turkey when it comes to their sort of visions of what to do about Gaza?
I think for Donald Trump, Gaza issue is separate than the U.S. foreign policy of Israel. And why I separate them is because, of course, the ultimate plan for Israel is to expand the occupation and expand the attacks and aggressiveness to the wider region. But is that really something that Donald Trump specifically as a US president wants? I'm not sure about that. So there is that discrepancy between Netanyahu's plans and his method of this expansion and how Donald Trump wants to be seen, or how he wants to portray himself as the peacemaker. So there's that discrepancy. But when it comes to the U.S. and Turkey, whether they align on Gaza, of course, United States is the main backer of this genocide and the main actor supporting Israel politically, economically, and militarily is the United States. So their position is like black and white, of course. But to limit Netanyahu, I think Trump will need to use some of his influence, and whether that can be successful or not will also depend on the pro-Israel lobby in the United States and how they want to draw perimeters around Donald Trump, and whether Donald Trump will have a maneuvering area or his influence will be stronger than theirs when it comes to limiting Netanyahu's actions. I mean, previously he said he told Netanyahu to be reasonable in Syria, but despite that message, Netanyahu went and attacked Damascus. They tried to carry out different attacks really deeper inside Syria, let alone on the occupation in Golan Heights.
Mehmet, always good to have you on the program and hear your analysis. Thank you so much.